Today we have three major stories to break down in full. The injury crisis threatening to derail Liverpool's season is getting worse. Hugo Ekitike is producing the form of his life and staking his claim as the most important player at this club right now. And the Salah conversation, one that nobody at Anfield really wants to have, is becoming impossible to ignore. Grab a seat. This one is going to be a ride. Let's start with the news that will concern Liverpool supporters the most, because the injury situation at Anfield right now is genuinely serious, and Arne Slot is being tested in ways that nobody anticipated at the start of this campaign. The latest blow comes in the form of Wataru Endo. The Japanese midfielder, one of the most reliable and versatile members of this squad, suffered a nasty ankle injury during Liverpool's hard-fought 1-0 victory at Sunderland last month. The circumstances of the injury made it particularly difficult to take. Endo was filling in at right back, a position he was asked to occupy due to existing absences elsewhere in the squad. He landed awkwardly after clearing a dangerous ball away from Liverpool's penalty area and was immediately helped off the pitch on a stretcher, leaving everyone inside the Stadium of Light deeply concerned. In the days and weeks that followed, the news didn't improve. Slot confirmed publicly that Endo faces a prolonged spell on the sidelines, and while the manager held on to a cautious hope that the midfielder might return before the season concludes, the reality is looking increasingly difficult. Endo has since made the decision to undergo surgery, a decision driven not just by the need to recover properly, but by a fierce determination to be fit and available for Japan at this summer's World Cup. It's entirely understandable from the player's perspective. But for Liverpool, it almost certainly means Endo is done for this Premier League season. And here's where the situation becomes genuinely challenging. Because Endo is not the only key squad member navigating a serious injury. Connor Bradley, the young right-back who has been one of Liverpool's most impressive performers when fit, is still working his way back from a knee injury that has already kept him out for an extended period. There is no firm return date. The club are being careful, as they should be with a player of his age and potential. But his absence has been felt acutely, and it's no coincidence that Endo found himself playing out of position at Sunderland in the first place. Giovanni Leone is also continuing his own recovery from a knee problem that has limited his involvement significantly. Another player who offers Slot genuine quality and versatility, unavailable, with no imminent return in sight. That is three important squad members: Endo, Bradley, and Leone, who are all facing the very real possibility of not featuring again this season. That is not a minor inconvenience. That is a significant chunk of squad depth gone at the most critical point of the campaign. And then there is Florian Wirtz. The German playmaker arrived at Liverpool in the summer with enormous expectations, and rightly so. One of the most technically gifted midfielders in European football, Wirtz was supposed to be the creative hub around which Slot's system could truly flourish at its highest level. But a troublesome back problem has robbed Liverpool of his services at a time when his creativity and vision could have made a real difference. Following the 5-2 win over West Ham, Slot was asked directly about Wirtz's prospects for the upcoming fixture against Wolverhampton Wanderers on Tuesday. His response was not encouraging. The German is unlikely to feature, and even the following week looks tight. There is no timeline that gives Liverpool fans much comfort. The real question now is how Slot manages this situation. Because what has been remarkable, genuinely remarkable, in the face of all these absences, is how this Liverpool side has continued to perform. 4 consecutive wins across all competitions. A 5-2 demolition of West Ham. A team that keeps finding ways to win regardless of who is and isn't available. That speaks to the depth of this squad, the quality running through the entire group, and the culture that Slot has built at this club. But depth has limits. And the coming weeks will test those limits as much as anything has tested them this season. How Liverpool navigate this injury crisis could define whether this campaign ends in silverware or regret. If there is one story that has defined Liverpool's season over the past several weeks, one narrative that has generated more excitement, more debate, and more genuine joy among the Anfield faithful than almost anything else, it is the extraordinary rise of Hugo Ekitike. The 23-year-old French striker has been absolutely sensational. And his performance in the 5-2 victory over West Ham United was perhaps the single most complete individual display we have seen from a Liverpool player all season. Let's go through it properly, because this performance deserves that level of attention. Ekitike opened the scoring in the 5th minute. Not a fortunate tap-in. Not a moment of opportunism from 2 yards out. A clinical, composed finish that demonstrated everything that makes this young man so dangerous. The intelligent run to create the space, the precise touch to control the ball under pressure, and the ruthless finish that gave the goalkeeper no chance whatsoever. Inside 5 minutes, Anfield was rocking, and Ekitike was the reason why. But here's the thing about Hugo Ekitike that separates him from so many strikers. It is never just about the goals. It's about everything else. The pressing, the movement, the selflessness, the ability to drag defenders out of position and create space for teammates. His 2 assists against West Ham were both a direct result of that intelligence. He read the game, found pockets of space, and delivered the ball with the kind of precision that suggested a player operating at a completely different level to those around him. And then there was the own goal he forced from the West Ham defense, a moment that might not show up in the assist column officially but was entirely a product of his relentless pressing and directional running. 3 of Liverpool's 5 goals had Ekitike fingerprints all over them. The pundits gave him the highest ratings of any player on the pitch. And quite frankly, it would have been difficult to argue for anyone else. With 22 goals across all competitions this season, Ekitike is now firmly in the conversation for the best young striker in the Premier League. His numbers are extraordinary for a 23-year-old. But what impresses coaches and analysts even more than the goals is the consistency of his work rate, his contribution to Liverpool's pressing structure, and his maturity in big moments. After the West Ham victory, Ekitike was asked about Mohamed Salah's subdued performance. A loaded question that lesser professionals might have handled awkwardly. His response was perfectly measured. He acknowledged honestly that Salah hadn't been quite at his best on the day, because that was the truth and everyone watching could see it. But he immediately pivoted to talking about the collective, about how success at this level belongs to the group rather than to any individual. He praised Salah's work rate, his commitment, his professionalism even when the chances weren't going in. It was a response that revealed as much about Ekitike's character as his goal tally reveals about his quality. Arne Slot has spoken on multiple occasions about the importance of having multiple match winners throughout the squad, players who can stand up and take responsibility on the days when others are struggling. Right now, Ekitike is doing exactly that. And he is doing it with a swagger and a composure that suggests the very best of him is still to come. At 23 years old, with 22 goals already to his name, developing in front of our eyes into one of the most complete forwards in European football. Hugo Ekitike is becoming the heartbeat of Arne Slot's Liverpool project. And if the goals keep coming at this rate, the conversation around his standing at this club is going to reach a very interesting place very quickly. And now to the conversation that nobody at Anfield really wants to have, but one that can no longer be avoided. Mohamed Salah has now gone 10 Premier League matches without scoring a goal. Let that number sit for a moment. 10 matches. For Mohamed Salah. A player who has rewritten the record books at this club. A player who has scored over 200 goals in a Liverpool shirt. A player who, in his peak seasons, was arguably the best attacker in world football. Against West Ham, Salah played every single minute and failed to register either a goal or an assist. His performance wasn't poor in the sense of being disinterested or uncommitted. He worked hard, he pressed, he tried to create. But the cutting edge wasn't there. The chances that came his way didn't go in. And for a player of his caliber, that is an uncomfortable pattern that is becoming harder and harder to explain away as a temporary blip. Now, and this is important, context matters enormously when discussing Mohamed Salah. We are talking about one of the greatest players in Liverpool's history. A player who has earned the right to have patience extended to him in moments of difficulty. Every great striker goes through periods where the goals dry up. It happens to Lewandowski. It has happened to Kane. It has happened to every forward who has ever played the game at the highest level. Goal-scoring form ebbs and flows. That is the reality of football. And what should not be overlooked is the sheer level of contribution Salah continues to make to this team even in this difficult spell. His movement still stretches defenses. His presence still commands defensive attention that creates space for players like Ekitike. His work rate remains elite. He has not downed tools. He has not sulked. He has not withdrawn from the collective effort. He continues to give everything for the team in every single minute he is on the pitch. But 10 games is 10 games. And the question that Liverpool supporters are genuinely asking right now is whether we are seeing the early signs of a player whose extraordinary powers are beginning to wane, or whether this is simply a temporary form slump that will end with a hat-trick in the next big game. Ekitike's diplomatic but honest assessment after the West Ham game captured the mood perfectly. Salah hasn't been himself. That is the truth. But the belief within the squad, and this came across clearly in Ekitike's post-match words, is that the Egyptian king will return to his devastating best. The talent doesn't disappear overnight. The instincts don't vanish. Sometimes great players just need the right moment to rediscover their rhythm. For Liverpool's sake. And for the title push that is still very much alive, that moment needs to come sooner rather than later.